Before the Open Road, before the Realm Reborn, before Cocoon and Pulse, before Ivalice, before the MMO, before the sequels, before voice acting, and before the throwback, there was Final Fantasy VIII, a follow-up to the most ambitious RPG Square had ever made. For it to be a worthy successor, the designers of Final Fantasy VIII had to be just as ambitious. Final Fantasy VIII is a weird one in the series, made at a time before there were so many weird ones. And the crown jewel of weirdness lies in how Square took the fundamentals of the JRPG experience and mashed them all into one all-encompassing super system, the Junction System. JRPGs are often made of several distinct gameplay systems. You can cast magic, use summons, increase stats, use items, wear equipment, you know, standard RPG stuff. But for a game like FF8, the follow-up to one of the most beloved RPGs of all time, what could be more ambitious than a system to replace all of these conventions? FF8's core systems revolve around equipping your characters with Guardian Forces, GFs for short. They're essentially summons. Junction a GF to any character, and you can assign your GF to learn skills as you gain experience by fighting other monsters. Some of those skills are fairly standard bonuses like raising HP by 20% or boosting your character's strength stat by 40%. But the Junction system also had more unique skills. You can unlock the ability to attach your magic spells to your stats, like put Ultima on your Vitality stat or Haste on your Speed stat. Also, instead of characters having an MP bar, each magic spell is a consumable item. To get more magic spells, you draw out copies of the spell into your stock in two ways, either from draw points located throughout the world, or by sucking the magic out of the enemies you fight. When you attach spells to your stats, the boost you get changes depending on how many of that spell you have in stock, the strength of the spell, and how well a spell vibes with that stat. For example, junctioning 100 Curaga spells to your HP slot will boost your HP more than 100 Cure spells. 100 Cure spells boost HP better than 100 Fire spells, and 100 Fire spells boost HP by more than 10 Fire spells. The way FF8 mixes magic and character progression is already a pretty complicated RPG system, but then it keeps going. Some GFs have the ability to turn items into magic spells directly, like turn that tent you just bought in the store into a bunch of Curaga spells. That lets you get high-end spells way earlier in the game than you could find normally. And even that isn't the end of the system. Some GFs let you turn triple triad cards into powerful items, which you can then turn into even more powerful late-game magic. If you look at it in the best light, the Junction system lets players tailor the game to their playstyle, giving players more options and more control than the average JRPG. It lets the player determine the answers to questions like, how do I want to develop these characters? Which GF abilities do I get next? Who do I attach them to? How do I combine GFs that work well together? How do I use and distribute my magic to maximize my stats? How can I get more of the magic I need to complete this build? The Junction system is set up to give small incremental rewards as you figure out the nuances of the system while you develop your characters. Lots of players go through a progression. They start by understanding the basics, then start min-maxing by drawing from enemies, then start playing with the item refinement system, and then discover the card mod techniques. At each step, your characters will become noticeably more powerful, changing the game experience along the way, from challenging, to balanced, to powerful, to game-breaking. If you know what you're doing, you can turn a 50-hour game into a 10-hour playthrough. How and when a player travels through those stages is mostly up to them, and discovering those tricks gives players a sense of mastery. The Junction system is large and complex enough to give players the space to experiment, figure out its mechanics, discover combinations, and develop each of their characters however they see fit. And yet, the Junction system and FF8 as a whole is extremely divisive. Some people think the story's wheels fall off about halfway through, but whatever, that's a matter of taste. Some people don't like the way enemies will level up alongside you, but that change was effective at guiding players away from level grinding. Despite all of its potential, Ff8's biggest problem is also the junction system. At its best, it's complex, ambitious, and innovative. At its worst, it's cumbersome, confusing, and very slow. The tutorials are paced poorly, worded poorly, and too front-loaded, showing up even before the first battles. A good chunk of the start of the game is spent explaining junctioning, but by the end of it you still don't have a full grasp of what the system is letting you do. Switching the GFs around when you swap party members is fiddly and slow, and the game forces you to do it pretty often. All of these abbreviations are the worst. The steep learning curve can be a deal breaker for hooking new players onto the game, and even other Final Fantasy fans may abandon Ff8 because of it. The system's problems don't stop at the tutorials either. The way most players start tinkering with the junction system is a terrible, grind-heavy experience. Usually, the first thing people try is maxing out how much magic they have. Why settle for 10 spells when you can have 100? You can draw magic from the scattered draw points in the world, but there aren't a ton of them. They just give a few copies of one spell and then lock you out from drawing again until your character takes enough steps. They're not very easy to farm. No, instead you're supposed to draw magic from enemies you encounter. One spell at a time, up to 100 copies, from 1 to 9 copies of the spell per draw, for each of your 3 party members. This takes a ton of time, and you have to do it for each spell. All of these. At least all the ones you want to junction with. And since the more spells you have, the more powerful your stat boosts are, you become a spell hoarder. You're not going to want to use any of your magic. Otherwise, you have to go back to the drawing board. The draw system is a major problem in the design of the game. No skill, not much risk, not much thought, and it's a weird choice for a game design that tried to make normal level grinding pointless. It's a chore, so people give up. It's unfortunate and understandable. It's just one part of the game, but you can't separate Ff8 from the junction system. For the people who fall in love with it, Ff8 is a classic. And for the people who don't click with it, Ff8 is a weird, frustrating game. It's not for everyone, and whether or not it's for you depends on your preferences for problem solving and playing with the system. Game designer Marc LeBlanc, one of the designers of System Shock and Thief, and a speaker at GDC, has proposed that fun in games can be broadly categorized in 8 different ways: sensation, fantasy, narrative, challenge, fellowship, discovery, expression, and submission. Final Fantasy VIII nails fantasy and narrative, much like the rest of the series. The tricky category is challenge. The junction system can provide challenge, but it can also undermine it. The initial confusion of the system can prevent the challenge from being fun, or the challenge can be skipped in the same way it can be skipped in a puzzle-solving game like The Witness, by looking up the answer or figuring it out very quickly. In Ff8, the answer is the quickest path to an incredible build. The game doesn't put up very many artificial roadblocks to keep you from solving the system earlier than it intends you to. The pieces to an endgame build are there early on, and it's just up to you to put them together. It's a two-edged sword. The design of the junction system gives you much more personal control as to how fast you progress on your journey to mastery, but it's also exploitable. If you avoid short-circuiting the challenge, and you're the kind of person who is attracted to working through the system, Ff8 offers a unique take on character progression in a very good JRPG. On the other hand, if you either get sick of dealing with the system, or skip over the process of mastery with a guide, by skill, or by luck, or if you just aren't interested in tinkering with it, Ff8 can feel like it's offering much less than other games, and that can be why the junction system, and Ff8 as a whole, is so divisive. In Final Fantasy's long history, the junction system is an icon. It's what makes Ff8 so unique, and at the same time makes it tough to introduce to new players. Square took a risk, and even though it can be frustrating at times, I'm glad they did. I'd rather play a game that takes a big risk than play a cookie-cutter game. That's the only way to get something innovative, even if it doesn't work out all the time. The junction system may have flown too close to the sun, but it burns beautifully.